The microphone clicked on, and 500 people heard Kang Joon-hyuk's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. "I will be filing for divorce." The orchestra stopped mid-note. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Ehai Aseji Kang stood exactly 3 feet from her husband, close enough to smell his cologne, close enough to see the way his jaw was set, not with guilt, not with grief, but with the practiced calm of a man who had rehearsed this moment many times before she ever knew it was coming. She didn't move. That was the thing people would talk about later. In the weeks and months that followed, when the gossip columns had picked the carcass of this night clean, what they would remember most was not the announcement, not the woman in the red dress who stepped forward from the shadows at the edge of the stage, not even what came after. They would remember Ehai's stillness. The way she stood in her ivory gown, her daughter Mina pressed quietly to her side, and did not flinch, did not tremble, did not give them a single thing to feed on. 500 of Seoul's most powerful people were watching. And Ehai gave them nothing. Joon-hyuk stepped away from the podium slightly, and that was when the woman in red moved. She was beautiful in the aggressive, deliberate way of someone who has spent years engineering their own desirability. Yoo Min-seo. The name had floated through certain circles for months, whispered in the way these things always were, always with that careful distance, that plausible deniability that powerful men depend on. But here she was now. No more whispers, no more shadows. She walked to Joon-hyuk's side and took his hand. The crowd exhaled as one. Mina, 11 years old and already far too practiced at reading rooms, tightened her grip on her mother's hand. Ehai felt it. She pressed her thumb gently into her daughter's knuckles once, twice, a signal between them, a language they had built in the private spaces of a marriage that had been quietly unraveling for years. "I see it too. Stay still, stay with me." Joon-hyuk looked out at the crowd, and then, with the precise timing of a man who understood spectacle, he nodded at Min-seo. She smiled. Then she placed one hand on her stomach. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence, not the shocked hush of a moment ago. This was the silence of calculation, of 500 minds simultaneously processing what they were seeing and what it meant. Because everyone in that room understood inheritance. Everyone in that room understood legacy. And everyone in that room understood what it meant when the heir to a billion-dollar empire placed his hand over a woman's stomach in front of witnesses. "Min-seo is expecting my child," Joon-hyuk said. "My heir." He paused. And then he added the words that would define everything that came after. "This child will carry my legacy, not the one she gave me." His eyes moved just briefly to Mina. The whispers started immediately. Not even whispered, really. The kind of murmured conversations that happen in ballrooms when people forget or stop caring, that the subject of their gossip is standing close enough to hear. Was the girl even really his? Had anyone actually ever been sure? The mother was Nigerian and the father was Korean, and the child looked like both and neither, and the world had never quite known what to do with that, had it? Mina stared straight ahead. Ehai's expression did not change. But something behind her eyes shifted. Something that had been patient for a very long time finished its waiting. She raised her hand, and the room noticed, because Ehai Aseji Kang did not raise her hand. She did not make scenes. She had spent 11 years in this family being the woman who did not make scenes. "I will sign the papers," she said. Her voice was low and even and carried perfectly in the dead-silent room. "But I have one condition." Joon-hyuk raised an eyebrow, slightly amused, mostly dismissive. "A DNA test," Ehai said, "for the child." The room shifted again. Min-seo's smile flickered, just a fraction, just enough for Ehai to catch it. Just enough. The results took 9 days. 9 days during which the Kang family's legal team called Ehai's phone 17 times, and she answered none of them. 9 days during which the Korean gossip media ran the photo of Min-seo at the podium on a loop. endlessly debating the heritage of an 11-year-old child who deserved none of this. 9 days during which Jun Hyuk sent 3 messages, formal, then frustrated, then almost plaintive, and Ahai read each one and set her phone face down and returned to whatever she was doing. She was not hiding. She was preparing. There is a difference, and Ahai had learned it the hard way. The results were delivered on a Thursday morning at the Kang family's main residence. Jun Hyuk was there. His mother, the formidable Madame Kang, sat at the head of the table with the expression of a woman who had survived too many crises to be frightened by another. Jun Hyuk's younger brother Taemin sat along the wall, quiet and slightly apart from the group, in the way of a man trying not to be noticed. 2 senior members of the Kang group legal team flanked the table. Ahai sat across from her husband for the first time in 9 days. She folded her hands on the table. She said nothing. The envelope was opened by the lead attorney, a precise man named Park who had handled Kang family matters for 14 years and had learned to keep his expressions neutral. He read the result once, silently, and then he looked up. Something moved across his face. It was not neutrality. He set the paper on the table and turned it to face Jun Hyuk. The room took 30 seconds to understand what it was reading, and then the understanding arrived, not with a crash but with the particular devastating quiet of something enormous shifting beneath the surface of the earth. The child Yu Min-seo was carrying did not match Kang Jun Hyuk's DNA. Jun Hyuk read the paper 3 times. 4. His face went through several stages in quick succession: confusion, rejection, fury, and then a terrible blankness that was somehow worse than all the others. "This is wrong," he said. "Run it again." "It was run twice," Park said carefully. "The margin of error is—" "Run it again." "Jun Hyuk," Madame Kang's voice was quiet but absolute. "Sit down." He hadn't realized he'd stood up. He sat down. Min-seo, who had been called into the room 20 minutes earlier and had not yet spoken, was now gripping the arms of her chair with both hands. Her face had gone carefully, professionally blank in the way of someone running through exit strategies in real time. "It must be a lab error," she said. "These things happen. I've been with no one else. You know that, you know." "Min-seo," Jun Hyuk's voice was barely above a whisper. "Stop talking." She stopped. Ahai had not spoken since she entered the room. She had watched the revelation land. She had watched Jun Hyuk's world tilt on its axis, watched Min-seo's performance begin to crack at its seams, and she had said nothing, done nothing, shown nothing. She simply reached into the folder she had brought with her and placed a second document on the table. Everyone looked at it. "What is this?" Jun Hyuk asked. "Additional findings," Ahai said, "from my own investigation." The room went very still. Before we go any further into this story, I want to pause here for just a moment. If you've been watching with us, if this story has already gripped you the way it's gripped so many others across the Velvet Empire family, then you already know that this channel is built on something real. We tell these stories for you. Not for numbers, not for metrics, but for the people who find us late at night when the house is quiet and they need something that actually moves them. That is who we do this for. And right now, I want to speak directly to you. If you are in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, if you have carried weight that younger people can't quite see on your face yet, if you have held your family together when it quietly threatened to fall apart, if you have smiled in rooms where you were hurting, this moment is for you. May your body remain strong and capable, carrying you through each day with energy that surprises even you. May sudden illness be turned away from your door, and may every doctor's appointment bring only good news. May your home be a place of genuine peace, where the people under your roof feel safe and wanted and loved. May your children and grandchildren find doors opening for them in places that have always been closed. May favor follow them into rooms before they even speak. May your finances hold steady through the uncertainty of these times, and may unexpected provision find its way to you in the moments you need it most. May you be granted the wisdom to know which battles are worth fighting, and which ones are better left to God. May the silent burdens you have carried for years begin to lift. May joy return to your body and your spirit. And may you live long, fully, and purposefully, finishing everything you were put here to do. If you received that, type Amen in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. The Velvet Empire family can only keep going when you stay with us. You are not just a viewer. You are the reason this exists. Now back to the room. Back to the document Ehai had just placed on the table. Min, who had been sitting quietly along the wall, shifted in his seat. A small movement. The kind of involuntary adjustment a person makes when their body understands danger before their mind can process it. Ehai noticed. She had a gift for that, for noticing the things people didn't know they were showing. 6 months ago, she said, her voice even, almost conversational, I hired a private investigator. I had questions I needed answered. About Minseo. About where she went when she said she was with friends. About whose car was parked outside a certain apartment building in Mapogu on 9 separate occasions. The color drained from Min's face so completely, and so rapidly that Madame Kang turned to look at him before Ehai had finished the sentence. No, Junhyuk said. The word came out flat and almost confused, like he tried to say something else, and that was what arrived. The child, Ehai said quietly, belongs to Min. The room exploded. Not loudly. The Kang family did not do things loudly. It exploded in the way of compressed air releasing, of long-held pressure finding the crack it had been searching for. Madame Kang stood. Junhyuk's chair scraped back. Park the attorney began gathering papers with the focused urgency of a man removing himself from a situation before it became something he would later be asked to testify about. Min stood up. Junhyuk, he started. Don't. Junhyuk's voice was a sound I had never heard from him before. Not anger, not exactly. Something underneath anger, something that had no clean name. Don't say my name right now. It wasn't planned, it wasn't. How long? Silence. How long, Min? Min looked at Minseo. A mistake because Minseo was looking at the floor. She had stopped performing. There was nothing left to perform for. He was on his own. 8 months, he said. Junhyuk sat back down very slowly, like a man who has just remembered that his legs exist and is no longer certain they can be trusted. 8 months. Minseo had been involved with Min for 8 months, had attended family dinners during those 8 months, had stood beside Junhyuk at events during those 8 months, had smiled at Min across tables while Junhyuk refilled her wine glass, had looked Ehai in the eye on multiple occasions during those 8 months. And Ehai had known. For some portion of those 8 months, Ehai had known. You knew. Junhyuk's gaze moved to his wife slowly. You said you're investigator, you've known, and you said nothing. Yes. Why? Ehai looked at him for a long moment. At this man she had married 13 years ago in a ceremony that had raised eyebrows in both their families. At this man who had given her Mina, and then spent 11 years slowly withdrawing from the child he helped create. At this man who had announced her humiliation in front of 500 people without the smallest tremor of hesitation. Because I was protecting you, she said, even then, even at the end. Junhyuk opened his mouth. I found out, she continued, and I thought if I handle this quietly, if I give him the chance to end it on his own terms, the family is protected. The business is protected. Mina is protected. So I waited. I watched. And then you stood up in front of 500 people and announced that you were replacing me. Her voice didn't rise, not even slightly. And so I stopped protecting you. The weight of it settled over the room like a physical thing. Madame Kang, who had not sat back down, looked at her firstborn son with an expression that contained more layers than any single word could carry. Disappointment was in there. Old, deep disappointment. But something else too. Something that looked, if you caught it at exactly the right angle, almost like recognition. She had seen this before in a previous generation. She understood what it cost. Mincio pushed back her chair. I think I should go. No one stopped her. She walked out of the room with her back straight and her heels precise on the marble floor, and the Kang family let her go, because there was nothing left to hold her accountable with that wouldn't destroy everything in the process. Min moved to follow. Sit down, Madam Kang said. He sat. What followed in the next hour was the architectural demolition of everything the Kang family had spent 3 generations building their story on. The investigator's report was thorough. I had not hired generously. She had hired meticulously, which was how she did everything, which was how she had always been, which somehow no one in this room had ever properly accounted for. Min's access to the company accounts, the transfers that shouldn't have existed, the decisions made in the last year that had seemed slightly odd but had been explained away, rationalized, filed under the general category of trust, because he was family, because he was blood, because surely not. Surely not. But yes. Jun Hyuk went quiet again. The explosive quiet of a man recalculating everything, going back through years of memory, and discovering that the map he had been using was for a different country. Park the attorney was recalled. New documents were drafted. Min's position in the Kang group was being discussed in the kind of measured, bloodless language that made the finality of it all the more devastating. I watched. She had seen the second result too, of course, the one still in her folder, the one she hadn't placed on the table yet. The one about Mina. She'd requested it quietly through a different laboratory, months before any of this had begun. She'd sat with the result in her hands on a Tuesday morning in her kitchen while Mina slept upstairs, and she had understood then that it was a kind of weapon, that it could be used, that it would change everything in the right moment in the right room. She had waited for the right moment. The right room. There's one more thing, she said. Jun Hyuk looked up. He had the hollowed-out eyes of a man who believed he had already received the worst of it, the eyes of someone who has already started rebuilding. She placed the second document on the table. Mina's paternity test, she said. I had it done privately 8 months ago before any of this. No one moved. I want you to read it, I said to Jun Hyuk. He reached for it slowly, the way you reach for something when your hands have gone slightly numb. He read it. The sound he made was not something Ehai would ever describe to anyone. It was private in the way of sounds that have no public version, sounds that come from somewhere below language. Mina was his. Biologically, irrevocably, entirely his. The daughter he had ignored, the daughter whose parentage he had cast doubt upon in front of 500 witnesses, the daughter he had called, in front of all of Seoul's most powerful families, inadequate, not the legacy he wanted, not the heir he needed, was the only legitimate heir he had. The only one. The room was absolutely silent. She's known this entire time. The question came from Madam Kang, directed at Ehai, very quietly. Since before the gala, Ehai said. I knew before he made his announcement. I knew who Mina was. I've always known who Mina was. Madam Kang closed her eyes briefly. You let him do it anyway, not accusatory, almost wondering. I gave him every chance not to, Ehai said. He chose to anyway. Jun Hyuk was still holding the document. He looked like a man who has just understood the depth of a hole he has dug for himself. Not the humiliation of the affair, not the betrayal by his brother. Something older and more elemental. He looked like a man who had held the most valuable thing in the world in his hands for 11 years and had gradually, methodically, put it down. Ehai. Don't, she said it gently, which was somehow more final than if she'd said it with fury. She's my daughter. She's always been your daughter. That was never the question. He looked at her, the question he couldn't quite form. She answered it anyway. I'm not doing this for revenge, she said. I need you to understand that. I'm not standing here because I want to watch you suffer. I'm standing here because my daughter stood in a ballroom full of people who doubted her, beside the father who put the doubt there, and she did not cry. And she shouldn't have had to be that brave. She shouldn't have had to know what it feels like to be that brave. Something cracked in Jun Hyuk's face. The papers are already with my attorneys, Ehai said. Everything I asked for, Mina's future is protected. Her inheritance is documented. My lawyer was very thorough. A pause. I hired the best. She picked up her bag. Ehai? His voice was raw, not the polished, controlled voice of the man at the podium 9 days ago. Something younger. Something that had been there a long time ago and had slowly been buried under ambition and expectation and the 1,000 small choices that accumulate into a life. I was wrong. About everything. You know that. You have to know. I know, she said. That's not the same as it being fixable. She walked to the door. She turned back once, not to Jun Hyuk but to Madame Kang, and something passed between them. The older woman gave a single, slow nod. The acknowledgement of one woman to another who has survived something that should not have had to be survived. Then Ehai was gone. The scandal broke in parts, the way big scandals do, one piece at a time over the following weeks until the whole shape of it was visible. The mistress and the younger brother, the fabricated pregnancy, the DNA results, the legitimate heir who had been publicly questioned at a gala. Korean business media ran it for a month. International outlets picked up the thread. The Kang Group's stock fluctuated. Emergency board meetings were called. Min was removed from the company quietly, with the kind of language that left just enough ambiguity for everyone to maintain their dignity. Min Si disappeared from Seoul's social circuit entirely. The apartment in Mapogu was vacated. Jun Hyuk held the company together. He was good at that. It was the thing he was best at. He showed up to board meetings and gave interviews and managed the public narrative with the precision of a man who had been trained from birth to protect the family name above all else. He sat in his penthouse in the evenings, surrounded by everything he had built, and he was completely alone. He tried once more 3 weeks later, not a message this time. He came to Ehai's apartment, the one she had rented, modest by Kang standards, in a neighborhood she had chosen herself, and he stood in the lobby and called her from the intercom. She answered. I need to see Mina, he said. That is arranged through your attorneys and mine, she said. You have the schedule. I need to see you. A pause. Jun Hyuk, she said, and there was something in her voice that was not unkind. Something that was perhaps the last remnant of 13 years and everything they had been to each other before things had broken. I spent 11 years protecting you from your own choices. I'm not able to do that anymore. I'm not willing. And honestly, I don't think you want me to. I think you want someone to finally let you face what you've done. Silence on the line. Go home, she said. Be present for Mina when the schedule allows it. That's what's available to you now. That's what you have. She ended the call. She stood in her kitchen for a moment, in the quiet of her own space, in the particular piece of a life that is smaller than it was but is genuinely, finally, hers. Mina was in the next room doing homework. The sound of her pencil on paper was audible through the wall, ordinary and irreplaceable. I made tea. She stood at the window and looked out at the city that had watched her humiliation and was now, if it was paying attention, watching something else, something harder to name. The sight of a woman who had made her exit on her own terms, carrying the only thing that had ever mattered. She had not won. That was not the word for it. She had simply refused to lose on his terms, and she had walked out of the battlefield with her daughter and her dignity intact. And she was going to build something new now, something that didn't require her to be invisible. Whatever came next, it was going to be hers. And Mina, the real heir, the only heir, the daughter who had stood in a ballroom full of whispers and held her mother's hand and did not flinch, would know, from this point forward, exactly who she was. Not a question, not a rumor, not the child someone doubted. She was a Kang, and she had her mother's spine. If this story moved you, drop your thoughts about Eha in the comments. Was she right to walk away? Could you have stayed calm the way she did? Tell us. We want to hear from the Velvet Empire family. And if you're ready for your next story, the rest of our channel is waiting for you. Stories that hit just as hard, characters that stay with you, endings you will not see coming. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and come find us in the next one. You already know where we are. Because some legacies aren't built in boardrooms. They're built in the quiet, stubborn act of choosing yourself.